Imagine Walter Cronkite, right? The most trusted man in America, broadcasting this historic emotional end to the 1960s counterculture era.
Oh, yeah, a massive cultural moment.
Exactly. Picture the most prestigious magazines in the country, the ones that basically define modern journalism, all printing the exact same poetic finale. They were all talking about a legendary psychedelic bus making its final journey to the Smithsonian Museum.
Right.
Now imagine this, well, every single word of it was completely wrong.
Just completely fabricated, yeah.
They were tricked, honestly, by a man with a fake bus, a book contract, and a total refusal to correct their mistakes. So welcome to today's deep dive. Our mission today is unpacking the true, just absolutely absurd story behind legendary counterculture icon Ken Kesey's so-called Great Smithsonian Caper.
It is such a wild ride.
It really is. And our source material for this is a brilliant behind-the-scenes account written by Zane Kesey, that's Ken's son, of course documenting the events that were actually captured in the movie further on.
Yeah, and it is a remarkable document because, this story isn't just a funny anecdote, it serves as a fascinating case study in myth-making.
Oh, absolutely.
We are going to look at exactly what happened step by step to see how an innocent local news mistake became this legendary piece of counterculture lore that entirely duped the mainstream media.
Okay, let's unpack this because the scale of this media failure is staggering.
Yeah.
I want you to imagine a financial bubble. You know how those work, right?
Right, investors speculate on a rumor.
Exactly. They pour all their capital into it, and the stock of that rumor gets so astronomically high that when the crash inevitably comes, nobody wants to admit they are bankrupt.
That is a perfect way to look at it.
In this specific story, the media speculated on a rumor about Ken Kesey and the Smithsonian. They invested their absolute top reporters in it, and Kesey simply decided to sit back, watch the bubble inflate, and purposefully never correct them.
To understand how that bubble started, though, we first need to look at what actually happened during the initial interaction between Ken Kesey and the establishment.
Because there was a real interaction, right?
Yes, there was. The accepted mythology is that Kesey brought his legendary bust to the museum as some grand symbolic surrender to history. But the reality is heavily grounded in logistics and, well, terrible deals.
Yeah, the source material tells us that first, someone in their orbit named George had these millionaire friends who stepped up with an offer.
Right, the restoration offer.
Right. They said they would pay to fully restore the original historic bus.
Mm-hmm.
But the catch was massive. They wanted the bus given to them permanently.
Which is just commodification of the counterculture at its finest. I mean, wealthy individuals often seek to buy the ultimate symbol of rebellion just to own it, to tame it.
You have to put it on a shelf.
Exactly. Kesey obviously rejected that. But then the Smithsonian Institution actually did come out. They formally asked for the original bus.
Oh, wow. So they did want it initially.
They did. But they made a crucial admission during the negotiations. They told Kesey they would never actually have the room to display it on the museum floor.
I mean, that is just wild. They want the most famous bus in American history, but they can't even clear a parking spot for it.
It gets worse. They went further than that. They told him they didn't even want to restore it.
Wait, really?
Yeah, the Smithsonian wanted to take the bus exactly as is, decaying and rusting, and essentially hide it away in a box in some vast, climate-controlled storage facility in Maryland.
Kesey's reaction to that is just visceral. He flat out refused. He told them he wouldn't let them put his life's work in a box forever, hidden away like the Ark of the Covenant.
That is such a vivid comparison.
I love that imagery so much. Picture the final scene in Raiders of the Lost Ark, right? You have this glowing, powerful artifact being nailed into a wooden crate and wheeled into a cavernous, dusty government warehouse by some nameless bureaucrat.
That's exactly how he saw it. So the museum deal is dead. But what's fascinating here is the absolute clash of core values that caused it to die.
Tell me more about that.
Well, a museum's entire imperative is preservation. They want to entomb a piece of history to keep it safe from the ravages of time. But Kesey, on the other hand, fundamentally believed that a bus is meant to be driven.
Right, it's active.
Exactly. It isn't a painting to be hung on a wall. It's a vehicle for experience. To lock it in a dark warehouse just to save it from rust is to basically kill the spirit of the thing itself.
Okay, wait, I'm stuck on this one detail. If the Smithsonian flat out insulted his core philosophy by saying they'd shove his life's work in a crate, Why did the source material say Kesey ended up giving them a spare tire and a massive acid test banner?
Oh, that's the best part.
Why not just tell them to get lost entirely and slam the door?
Giving them the tire is the ultimate subversive gesture. Think about the symbolism of it. A spare tire is the dead rubber.
Oh, I see.
It's the part that gets discarded or swapped out when it's no longer useful for the journey. He handed the institution the dead rubber and the old signage, but he kept the engine, the chassis, and the actual vessel of the journey for himself.
That is brilliant.
It really is. It was a compromise that gave them their artifact without surrendering the soul of the movement.
Okay, so if you are listening to this and wondering how the Smithsonian factors into the big national road trip that the media reported, well, it actually doesn't.
Not at all.
That deal was completely dead. The original bus was just sitting out in the Oregon woods in an area they called the swamp, just rotting away. So how did a shiny, restored psychedelic bus suddenly appear in the national news heading east?
That is where the mundane reality of the publishing industry enters the picture and accidentally sets the stage for the hoax.
Over a book contract, right?
Exactly. It all started with a contract dispute over a book. Ken Kesey's publisher was getting ready to print his new book, The Further Inquiry.
Right, and Kesey didn't just want a normal hardcover book.
No, of course not.
He wanted a special, highly technical feature. He wanted the margins of the book to have flip pages, like, those little animations you draw in the corners of your notebook in middle school.
Oh yeah, where you flip them with your thumb.
Exactly. He wanted the reader to be able to physically flip through the pages and watch little movies of Neil Cassidy, the legendary driver of the original bus, doing his manic movements in actual animation.
Which, from a reader's perspective, is a highly creative, interactive way to design a book. But from a 1990s publishing standpoint, it is a logistical nightmare.
I can imagine.
Printing flipbook margins requires absolute precision minding. If the standard printing press trims the pages even a millimeter off, the animation stutters and fails.
So super expensive.
Incredibly expensive. It required custom cutting and specialty assembly that would send the production costs skyrocketing. The publisher looked at this request and said it was functionally impossible on a mass scale.
But then they made a fatal mistake to get out of it. They jokingly dared him.
A huge mistake.
They essentially told Kesey they would spend the exorbitant amount of money to make his little flipbook movies if he brought the psychedelic bus to the Las Vegas Booksellers Convention to promote it.
They figured that was impossible.
Right, and Kesey, without missing a single beat, just says, okay.
The publisher fundamentally underestimated his willingness to manifest chaos to get what he wanted. He used their bluff as leverage.
It's like your boss jokingly daring you to bring a live elephant to a corporate retreat in order to get your department's budget approved, and instead of backing down, you just say, challenge accepted, and actually go out and find an elephant.
That analogy perfectly captures the absurdity of the hustle, because the execution of it is incredible.
Oh, so fast.
Yeah, on the way home, they are in Eugene, Oregon, and they just happen to stumble across a 1947 International bus for sale. And crucially, it has a very similar front-end grille to the original historic bus.
So they buy it right then and there.
On the spot.
Zane's account notes they spent months preparing it, working around the clock in record time. They painted it with the classic psychedelic swirls, rigged up the sound system, and suddenly they have a shiny, fully functional clone of the most famous bus in the world.
Ready for Vegas.
And it is ready to roll to Las Vegas purely to win a bet about a flipbook.
The grand, highly publicized counterculture road trip wasn't born out of some deep philosophical rebellion against the establishment. It was literally a bargaining chip.
Just leverage.
Exactly. Kesey gets his flipbook, the publisher gets their stunt, but this harmless corporate bargain is exactly where the media accidentally builds their own trap.
Okay, so Kesey has this newly painted 1947 International clone ready to go. The local news crew comes out to Eugene to cover it.
Right, the local affiliate.
They point their cameras at this beautiful, newly painted bus. But instead of reporting the facts that Kesey bought a different bus to drive to a booksellers convention in Vegas, the local news airs a report saying that Ken Kesey has fully restored the original bus and he is taking it to the Smithsonian Museum.
The local reporters basically conflated two entirely different timelines.
Yeah, they just mashed them together.
They heard distant rumors of the old, failed Smithsonian offer. They saw a shiny bus parked in front of them and connected dots that simply did not exist. They built a narrative out of thin air.
Initially, the crew actually wanted to fix the error. Zane Kesey's account mentions they saw the broadcast that night and their reaction was, WTF, We need to call the station tomorrow to straighten this out.
Which is a perfectly reasonable response. But before anyone could pick up a phone to issue a correction the next morning, the entire media ecosystem descended on them.
It just exploded.
The phone started ringing off the hook, and it wasn't the local paper calling.
No, it was the heavyweights. Walter Cronkite's producers,
Mhm.
Rolling Stone magazine, High Times, all of them calling the Kesey compound frantic, demanding to send their top reporters to join what they were breathlessly calling the historic last trip to the Smithsonian.
The dynamic shifted instantly right there. Kesey was faced with a choice.
Right.
He could answer the phone and explain the mundane truth about a book convention in Nevada, or he could hand them the mythology they were begging for. He chose the latter.
He decides to let the prank be on the media. The original historical bus is still quietly sitting, rotting away, hidden down in the Oregon woods. The media is hyperventilating over a newly painted 1947 International, and Kesey just opens the door and lets them board.
Because the media wanted the poetic ending.
They really did.
They wanted the final chapter of the hippie era to conclude with a neat, tidy bow, delivering the ultimate symbol of the 1960s to the ultimate symbol of the American establishment, the Smithsonian.
Right, it writes itself.
They wanted that narrative so badly that their desire for a compelling story completely overrode their professional skepticism.
Here's where it gets really interesting, though. Some of the most legendary, highly trained journalists in America didn't even bother to do basic journalism.
Nothing. No fact-checking at all.
Nobody verified the VIN number to see if it was the right bus.
No.
Nobody called the Smithsonian to ask about an arrival date.
Right.
Nobody even asked to see a road map to check the actual route.
It's astounding.
They just jumped blindly onto a narrative because the romantic idea of it sounded too good to fact-check.
This raises an important question about journalistic integrity. By boarding that bus, those journalists unwittingly volunteered to become the subjects of Kesey's ultimate social experiment.
Oh, definitely.
They were no longer reporting on the counterculture. They were the punchline of its biggest joke.
So the trap is completely set. The fake bus is loaded up with original pranksters, and peppered among them are all these big-time, serious reporters with their notepads and recorders. They pull out of the driveway.
The journey begins.
But they don't head east toward Washington, D.C. They head west, down into California, to fulfill the actual contractual obligations of the Further Inquiry book tour.
The psychological tension on that bus for the next few weeks must have been an absolute pressure cooker.
I can't even imagine.
You have the pranksters who know exactly what the real destination is, acting like everything is normal. And you have these esteemed journalists who are diligently taking notes, interviewing people about the end of an era, all the while waiting for the bus to merge onto an eastbound highway.
Zane's account details how this charade dragged on for weeks. Weeks of driving up and down California, stopping at book events, while the national media reporters on board kept tapping their watches, asking, "Hey man, when are we going to turn east?"
Just waiting for the pivot.
And the Kesey crew had to constantly deflect. I mean, how do you stall a major magazine reporter for 3 weeks? You play psychedelic music, you talk in riddles, and you dodge the question.
A classic prankster move.
And all the while, Zane, along with Hagen and Swan, are pointing cameras at the journalists, filming every single second of their confusion for the movie Further On.
They were documenting the media, documenting a lie. It's an incredibly layered, brilliant piece of performance art.
It really is art at that point.
The journalists thought they were capturing history, but they were actually the actors in Kesey's movie. But an experiment like that needs a climax. You can't just drive around California dodging questions indefinitely.
Right, the bubble has to burst eventually. And the climax they orchestrated is pure cinematic gold. The bus pulls into Stockton, California, which happens to be the very last stop of the book tour. The trap springs.
You're nice.
While everyone, including the frustrated reporters, is inside the venue at the book event, a planned heist takes place in the parking lot. The younger generation of the crew swoops in and literally kidnaps the bus.
They steal their own fake bus to end the fake trip.
And they leave behind a brilliant theatrical taunt. In the empty parking spot where the bus had been sitting, they draw a chalk outline on the pavement, like you'd see at a murder scene. Inside the outline, they write 2 words: "Nothing lasts."
Let's analyze the philosophical weight of that specific phrase, "nothing lasts."
Yeah, let's get into that.
By leaving the chalk outline, the pranksters were executing high-level performance art right under the noses of these serious journalists. They were delivering their thesis statement.
Which was
That the spirit of their movement couldn't be boxed up in a museum crate, it couldn't be institutionalized, and it certainly couldn't be captured and sanitized by a mainstream media narrative. A bus is meant to be in motion, and when you try to freeze it, it disappears.
It is the ultimate rejection of the Smithsonian preservation concept we talked about at the beginning.
Perfectly stated.
But the theory was brilliant, while the execution of the kidnapping gets impossibly messy.
Oh, it's a disaster.
The younger crew steals the bus, and they drive it to a nearby cattle loading dock to hide it from the reporters and the authorities. They have to disguise the most recognizable, brightly colored psychedelic vehicle on the planet.
Not an easy task.
Their genius plan, frantically painting the entire thing gray and blue to make it look like a boring, nondescript church bus.
Using temporary paint, which is a crucial detail for the survival of the bus.
Temporary paint, sure, but picture the physical reality of this moment. You are actively trying to hide a massive, glowing cultural icon. You are at a dusty cattle dock, slapping this drab, depressing gray paint all over the intricate psychedelic swirl.
Just rushing to cover it up.
You're sweating bullets, looking over your shoulder, and mid-paint, while they're literally holding the brushes the police show up.
It is the exact worst-case scenario when you are dealing with a stolen vehicle, even if you stole it from yourself.
The cops just roll up on them in the middle of nowhere. The crew is suddenly paralyzed with terror because they realize the layers of their own prank are collapsing on their heads.
The reality check.
They are standing there, covered in gray paint, actively trying to disguise a bus that the rest of their own crew back at the Stockton book event is actively planning to report as stolen to the local authorities.
It's so convoluted.
You can't write this stuff. It feels like a tense, absurd scene out of a Coen Brothers movie playing out in real life.
When you invite that level of orchestrated chaos into the real world, sometimes reality bites back. The pranksters flirted with the line between performance art and actual grand theft auto, and the police arriving forced those two worlds to collide.
Surprisingly, though, the aftermath resolves itself without anyone going to jail.
Thankfully.
Zane's account tells us that they managed to talk their way out of it with the police. The bus wasn't impounded. The younger crew eventually drove it safely back to Oregon and parked it in an area known as Chuck's Woods.
And the paint.
That drab, gray church bus disguise. Because it was temporary, it literally just washed off in the rain, revealing the bright psychedelic colors underneath once again.
Nature washing away the drab disguise to reveal the true colors underneath is incredibly poetic. The bus survived, the publisher's dare, the media circus, and the cattle dock panic.
It really did. It went on to have many more tricks with Ken Kesey and the pranksters over the years. They even shipped it across the Atlantic. And all that incredible footage that Zane, Hagen, and Swan shot of the clueless reporters on that fake trip to the Smithsonian. It was meticulously edited into the movie further on. Zane notes in his account that the movie might someday be re-released on YouTube.
That would be amazing.
Yeah, so people can actually watch the journalists sitting on the wrong bus, going the wrong direction, completely unaware of the joke.
The true punchline of this entire deal dive, though, the element that elevates it from a funny prank into a profound look at media psychology, is what happened next with those reporters.
Because the media never admitted they were pranked.
Right.
Not a single major outlet published a retraction.
None of them.
Walter Cronkite didn't go on the air and say, hey, we got on the wrong bus, we went to California instead of D.C., and we fell for a hoax. Rolling Stone didn't print an editor's note. Every single one of them reported to the American public that the prank was on the museum.
If we connect this to the bigger picture, this story forces us to look at how history is constructed and protected by those who write it. The journalists had a choice when they realized the bus was never going to the Smithsonian. They could admit they failed at the basic tenets of their profession, fact-checking, verifying sources, and were thoroughly embarrassed by a group of counterculture pranksters. Or they could print the legend. They chose to print the legend. They protected their institutional egos at the expense of the truth. I want you to think about that. What stands out to you about how this story was reported? Does it change how you view the official record of the 1960s?
So what does this all mean? It means our analogy of the speculative bubble was dead on. The media inflated a rumor, convinced themselves the investment was sound, and then broadcast the resulting bankruptcy to the world as a historic victory.
They chose the myth because the myth was safer than admitting they got played.
They built their own metaphorical glass case, put their own fake artifact inside it, and told the public it was an invaluable piece of history.
It really is a stunning failure of journalism.
The ultimate takeaway isn't just that Ken Kesey managed to trick the media. It's that the media doesn't always report on reality. They report on narrative. And when reality didn't match the neat, poetic ending they wanted for the 1960s, they simply discarded reality.
They wrote their own ending.
If Walter Cronkite and the most prestigious magazines in the country were willing to do that with a brightly colored, fake psychedelic bus just to save face, what else is sitting under glass in our history books right now that never actually happened? How many other accepted historical facts in our culture are actually just uncorrected media mistakes? Something to think about the next time you read the plaque.
Please click like and then subscribe. Also share this video with your friends. Thank you.